Hello and welcome to the Day Ahead. It is Monday, December the 15th. I'm Andrew Gagan. Well, the local market is set to a negative start to the week, with ASX futures down around 0.6%. Global equity markets fell on Friday, led by those AI-related tech stocks, with investors wary of valuations. While the US dollar edged higher and US Treasury yields jumped on hawkish Fed speak. On Wall Street, the S&P 500 and Nasdaq fell heavily in the wake of results from Broadcom and Oracle. And for the week, the S&P 500 fell more than 0.5%, the Nasdaq lost 1.6%, while the Dow gained around 1%. Broadcom shares tumbled after the chipmaker warned of slimmer future margins, causing renewed concerns about the profitability of surging AI investments. Oracle shares fell further after falling 11% the previous session, as the cloud software company revealed a weak financial forecast amid reports that its data centers for ChatGPT maker OpenAI were being delayed. Chipmaker Nvidia shares fell on reports that it told Chinese clients it's evaluating expanding production capacity for its H200 AI chips. Alphabet shares rose as JP Morgan said it was its top pick for 2026, expecting its AI leadership and stack strength, as well as data advantages and global distribution, to drive growth acceleration and margin stability. However, its shares fell into the negative late in the session. Costco beat Wall Street estimates for the first quarter revenue and profit as consumers snapped up affordable essentials. Lululemon shares rallied after the apparel maker raised its annual profit forecast and said its chief executive was leaving the company. And US listed shares of cannabis companies jumped on reports that President Trump will push the government to loosen federal restrictions on marijuana. Well, this week attention will be focused on US non-farm payrolls data for October and November, which has been delayed by the government shutdown and is expected to provide markets a guide to the Fed's next policy moves. Well, Fed member Beth Hammack has said she would prefer interest rates to be slightly more restrictive, saying right now we've got policy that's right around neutral. I would prefer to be on a more slightly restrictive stance to help continue to put pressure on the inflation side of the central bank's mandate. And Jeffrey Schmidt has said he's dissented against the decision to lower interest rates at last week's meeting, saying inflation remains too high. The economy shows continued momentum, and the labour market, though cooling, remains largely in balance. I view the current stance of monetary policy as being only modestly, if at all, restrictive. Well, those hawkish comments saw US Treasury yields rise, the 2-year at 3.55%, the 10-year rising to 4.19%. Markets pricing in a 20% chance the Fed funds rate will be cut by 25 basis points at the next meeting at the end of January. While Australian 3-year government bond yields are up to 4.14%, the 10-year at 4.76%, markets here pricing in a 35% chance the RBA cash rate will be hiked at the next meeting on February 3rd, with a total of 2 hikes by the end of 2026. The US dollar rose on Friday. The Aussie dollar is currently at around 66.5 US cents. Oil prices closed lower on Friday to be down 4% for the week, as a supply glut and a potential Russia-Ukraine peace deal outweigh concerns about any impact from the US seizure of a Venezuelan oil tanker. Brent crude futures at $61 a barrel. Copper plunged more than 3% on Friday after hitting a record high earlier in the session, as renewed fears of an AI bubble triggered a broad sell-off of riskier assets. Silver prices were also down about 3% after hitting an all-time high, while gold has risen to around $4,300 an ounce. And Bitcoin has fallen below 89,000 US dollars. Locally this week, we get the Global Purchasing Managers Index for December tomorrow, along with Westpac's consumer confidence for the month, and the government releases its mid-year economic and fiscal outlook, with expectations the budget deficit will improve to $32 billion from $42 billion forecast in March. Thursday sees the national accounts and Friday private sector credit for November. Overseas, today China releases retail sales, investment and production data for November. Tuesday, the US non-farm payrolls for October and November, as well as retail sales for October and the global PMIs. Thursday, the Bank of England makes its policy decision, as does the European Central Bank, and US inflation data is released. Friday, the Bank of Japan makes its decision on interest rates. That is your week ahead. We'll see you again tomorrow.